Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to episode number 151 of the weekly podcast Hooked on Wooden Boats. Thanks for tuning in to episode number 151 of the weekly podcast Hooked on Wooden Boats. I am your host, Daniel E., as in Ernest Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. And this is the world's first podcast. That's right, it's the very first in the world. I think it's still the only one. Fully 110% dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the world. This is also a podcast that normally doesn't get edited a whole lot. As you can tell by my opening slur there. And that's okay. I like it to be casual, down to earth. This is who I am. Once in a while I stutter. Not that often. I'm not a big stutterer. But it does happen upon occasion, and that's okay. Anyway, welcome to the show this week. We've got a fun time planned as usual. Today's featured segment is an interview with Chris Lux. Chris contacted me by email a few weeks ago. Said he had found my podcast, was really excited because he moved to the Seattle area recently and got interested in, he got hooked up with the Center for Wooden Boats in Seattle, for one thing. And then he got interested in folding boats. And he actually went and bought a Klepper canoe that was built quite a few years ago, I believe in the 70s. It's a folding boat. The inside framework is made of wood and it folds up, and it's got a canvas skin over it. Folds up into 2 duffel bags. So we talk about that on the podcast today, which is pretty sweet. So stick around for that. Today's podcast is sponsored by Duckworks Boat Building Supply from Harper, Texas. My friends Chuck and Sandra Lineweber own the business. They've been operating it since 1999. They sell all kinds of parts and supplies and boat building supplies and plans and sales for small to medium to actually some large-sized boats. They've got great deals on things like epoxy, books. I mean, they got all kinds of gear, anchors, brushes, whether it's building your boat, maintaining your boat, or outfitting your boat, they've got it, and they've got very fair prices, excellent customer service. So I would encourage you to go over to their website and check it out. Tell them Wooden Boat Dan sent you. Best way to get there is to go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/duck. D-U-C-K. So check it out. I think you'll like it. So every week for the last, 8 or 10 or 20 weeks, I've been talking about putting my scamp in the garage every week. And guess what? It's not there, so I'm going to stop promising that. It is getting closer, but here's my issue. Our garage, my son just got married, so I had the garage full of wedding-type stuff. We've only been in this home since March, so the garage was cluttered. And it's like if I'm going to pull my boat in there, this is a 2-car garage, I got to have the place clean and organized. Because if I just stick my boat in there before it's organized, it's just going to be more work to get things set up. And so that's what I'm working on. So I did actually start that process this week, which was good. And I've also got a table saw. And I know I mentioned this before, that I sold my big Delta Unisaw, and a friend of mine gave me a Grizzly saw that he had that needs a new fence installed. And he actually has the new fence, gave it to me. It's a nice fence, so I got to get that installed and clean the saw up and get that working. And I want to do that before I put my boat in because I'm going to be cutting a lot of cleats for the Scamp. So that's the update on the Scamp. I am anxious to get it in there, but got to get the garage set up. Got to get my heater hooked up, which means I got a wire and a 220 outlet for my little portable heater. And because it's been cold here lately, we've had a couple very cold spells, which is unusual for this part of Washington. We've had temperatures in the teens this week, Fahrenheit, for probably 4 or 5 days, and we had a cold spell back in November too. So it's pretty cold in the garage, so I got to get some heat going. But anyway, folks, just to let you know, I am working on it. I want to get it in there and get going. I'd like to give a shout out to our new subscribers to the almost monthly electronic newsletter, Scott Forrester, John Fennan, Butch Miller, and Richard Johnson. Thanks for subscribing, folks. If you haven't done so, you can get my free newsletter electronically if you go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. Give me your name and email. You'll get the newsletter. And I did actually send one out last week, which was the first one I had sent since September, which is pretty bad on my part. But anyway, I did get her sent, so we got the process rolling again. So check it out. Just a fun way for me to connect, let you know what's going on at Hooked on Wooden Boats, and provide some resources and things like that. Also, I do have a special on my ebook, Get in the Wooden Boat Game, a guide for building your first boat. Normal price on that electronic book is $5. Right now, if you use the code 50, you get the book for half price, $2.50. So if you're interested in doing that, which I would encourage you to do so if you're going to build a wooden boat for your first time and you got questions about how to start the process, this book walks you through that. You can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/ebook1, click on the purchase button there, and then use the code 50 on PayPal, and you get the book for $2.50, which is less than the cost of most lattes or mochas today. So check it out. I'd really appreciate it. Also, on my homepage, there's some links there where you can purchase Russell Brown's book on epoxy. And I get paid a small commission if you do that, and it's an excellent book. I've got it myself, and it's been very helpful. So check that out also. Well, 2014 is drawing to a close here. I'm recording this on December 3rd, which, by the way, is my wife and my is a way to say that, 31st anniversary, which is pretty cool. So I'm hoping we make it another 31 years. That would be awesome. However, I'd be 120 years old. No, anyway, so I'm recording this. Yeah, there's only 28 days left in 2014. If you listen to my friend Dan Miller on the 48 Days podcast, he thinks you should already have your 2015 goals laid out, which is probably not a bad idea, but I always kind of start late. But anyway, I hope the rest of 2014 is good for you. You have a great Christmas and a good New Year coming up here. And I did take last week off for Thanksgiving. We spent the day with family, saw my son in Bellingham, and then spent some time with my sister and my other boys in Bothell, and talked to my son and his wife in Florida. And we had a great time. It was really fun to get together. We have a lot to be thankful for. Feel very blessed in our lives. Okay, we're going to move on to the interview with Chris Lux of Seattle, Washington. So take it away, Chris. Well, let's go ahead and get started here, Chris. It is November 12, 2014. I am on the phone with Chris Lux from Seattle. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Chris connected with me by email. He had got a hold of my podcast and listened to some stuff and sent me some information, told me what he was up to. He'd bought a Klepper folding canoe and was working on that and stuff. So we hooked up and said, let's do a little interview and have some fun with it. So Chris, you live in Seattle, but you're originally from Minneapolis, it sounds like. But just give us a brief, or actually, I wanted to ask you first how you found the podcast.
Yeah, so I'm someone who's listened to podcasts for years and pretty much look for podcasts that are surrounding whatever I'm currently interested in, whatever hobby I'm looking at, because you tend to find a lot of active people that are listening to podcasts, participating in those. And having moved to Seattle fairly recently and looking for boats, I thought I'm going to look out there and see what there is in the realm of boating and boat knowledge. And yours was the first thing that popped up in the search engine, and it was a good find because it's a fun podcast. The few episodes I've had a chance to listen to have been really informative, and it's on my subscribe list now.
Cool, very cool. I appreciate that, definitely. So give us a brief bio of yourself, Chris, where you're from and what you did growing up and stuff.
Yeah, so Midwest roots. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Spent most of my childhood in Indianapolis, Indiana, and that's kind of home base for the Lux family. And did my undergraduate at Notre Dame, and then went on to medical school training for both medical science and research science at Indiana University. Did a 3-year residency program in St. Louis, and decided to specialize in pediatric oncology, which brought me out to Seattle Children's Hospital about a year and a half ago.
Okay, very good. Did you do some boating with your family growing up, Chris, at all?
So my dad and my brothers and I and my grandfather would take canoe and sometimes kayak trips when we got chances. The majority of my boating experience actually probably came from playing with a little sailfish sailboat that my uncle won on an old game show called Remote Control. It was the second prize. He didn't quite win the grand prize that show, but he didn't have a place to sail it, and we had a little 5-acre pond, and so he sent it down our way, and my brothers and I got to tool around in that during summer days and learn the ins and outs of sailing.
Interesting. I did tell you earlier that I actually went to college in Springfield, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, went to Evangel College for a couple of years, and then graduated from what's now called Missouri State University.
Okay.
And drove quite a few weekends to St. Louis to take a class there, and did a couple other things there. Pretty cool place, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good town.
Yeah. So, Chris, in your email, you mentioned you bought a Klepper canoe. So I don't know a whole lot about Kleppers other than I think actually the first time I heard about a Klepper canoe was from Howard Rice,
okay,
who's a small boat adventurer and did a big did an ocean voyage in a Klepper quite a few years ago. But tell us, for those listening, tell us what a Klepper is actually.
Yeah, so I'm new to these as well. This was stalking Craigslist for a while. I was just looking to see what boats were going up for sale as the summer season ended. It seemed like a good time to look out for people unloading boats. And there were lots of different solid kayaks and different things. But this Klepper folding kayak really caught my eye. So I did some reading on it once I saw it for sale. And essentially it's a wooden frame that's kind of a skeleton that goes together in pieces. You assemble all of the wooden pieces for the bow and the stern, and then those both insert into a hull that is the top is a canvas and the bottom is sort of a rubberized fabric. And when you put the two pieces of the skeleton in, there's locking mechanisms that then push down into the bottom of the boat and off to the sides, and it snaps the whole thing into shape and locks the frame in. And then there's a pair of inflatable sponsons down the side that fit into notches in the wooden skeleton, and when you fill those up with a few breaths of air, the entire boat kind of snaps into a really tight package. So the one I picked up, I learned is called the Klepper Arius 2, and it's a 2-seater kayak. And so yeah, it's amazing that it folds down into 2 canvas bags that I can fit in the trunk of my Ford Focus and drive just about anywhere.
Wow, that's amazing. So you bought this on Craigslist?
I did, yeah. There was a guy that lived not far from where I am, and he had it out in his garage. And I went up and met with him, and he He showed me how to set it up, which is, I think, essential for a new Klepper buyer because it's a little confusing to put all the pieces together. And he had purchased it from a young couple up in kind of the San Juan Island area on Lopez Island. And I can tell you a little bit more about the history of the boat just from some surreptitious findings I found on the bag that came with the boat, if you like.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to hear that.
So one of the bags that contained the framing pieces had a luggage travel tag on it, and it listed a couple's name and a phone number. And I thought, it'd just be kind of fun to call that number and see if this is one of the original owners of this boat. And called it up and got a hold of this couple in North Carolina who were thrilled to hear that the kayak was still around and being put to use. And they described how they used it when they would fly in a small private plane up to Alaska. And they would just go to various lakes. And they had the Klepper because they could fold it and stow it in the back of the plane. And they could land on any lake they wanted, get the boat out, assemble it, and spend the day, the week, however long they wanted out fishing and exploring and come back to their plane at the end. So they were able to tell me some of that history of how the boat made its way from North Carolina out to Alaska and then eventually down to the Seattle, Washington area.
So they bought the boat new, Chris?
I got that impression, yeah. I got the impression that they bought it years and years ago. I don't know the original date of the boat, but the person I talked to indicated that they'd used it for quite some time.
Well, and then it ended up with somebody here in the Seattle area.
So,
okay, we're back. So, Chris, I was asking. Okay. So the folks bought this boat in North Carolina, and then it ended up in the Seattle area with the person you bought it from. And do you know how they used it or how long they had it?
I don't know exactly how long they had it. It does sound like they had it for quite a long time. And their story was that they gave it to their daughter out in Lopez, and then apparently they were unaware that she had sold it to someone else who also lives down in Seattle. And so hopefully I didn't get her in trouble by telling her parents that it had been trading hands.
Oh.
But yeah, happy to have it, and the couple was very generous. They said, well, we're glad to hear it's being used by someone, and we have since bought another one that we have in North Carolina. And if you're ever out in the area, you're welcome to use it to take it out on the water. So
wow.
They've never met me, and already in that little boating community, they said, you're welcome to our boat if you'd like. And I thought that was a pretty generous offer.
Yeah. So do you mind me asking how much you paid for it, Chris?
Yeah, so I paid just about $500 for it, and the new ones, if you buy them from Klepper, are anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000. So it's certainly not in new condition, but all the parts were there, and it was ready to get out on the water. So I feel like I got a pretty good deal.
Did you have to do any repairs before you took it out, Chris?
A few. I don't think any of them were necessary, but most of them were things I wanted to do just to get to know the boat a little better. So there's a number of rubberized keel strips along the bottom that prevent tears and snags if you were to ground it or snag on something underneath the boat. And those were all pretty detached from the boat. So I found some product called barge cement, read about people using that online, and just stripped all of those down, ran some acetone over them to remove any residual glues, and roughed up the inner side of those strips and re-cemented them on, and that worked like a charm. The canvas had a couple tears. There were a bunch of aftermarket grommets that had been added to the canvas, and some had clearly been put under too much load and ended up tearing little holes in the canvas. And so I got a piece actually of the original canvas that goes on these boats, and cut out the patches that I needed and used a liquid adhesive that worked surprisingly well to make these really strong patches on the surface of the canvas. But beyond that, I didn't have to do much to repair it.
And so how long have you had the boat, Chris?
maybe 3 weeks.
3 weeks, you say?
Yep.
Oh, wow. You just, this is really new. So tell me,
brand new.
you've, how many times have you had her out?
So I've had it out 3 times now.
Wow.
The first was just to make sure it was seaworthy, and took it out and ran it around South Lake Union, and then through a little canal area over to Lake Washington, and was able to test whether it could handle waves when a big Argosy cruise liner went past me, and found out that it chops right through those waves without a problem. And then took it out for a sailing run. I actually found that these boats are designed to take a sailing rig, and found another person on Craigslist up in Anacortes who sold me a sail and mast and boom, and went out and ran that through its paces.
Really? So what? Tell me about the sail configuration and what you do for keel or centerboard or whatever, rudder.
So it's a fairly simple sail configuration. There's a aluminum mast that goes through a central.
Okay, we're going to pause here for a second. Okay, so we're back
Start
again.
that section over again.
Yeah. So you were telling me about the mast and sail and the rig.
Yeah. So the mast it's a pretty simple aluminum mast. It goes through a cleat that sits up at the front of the coaming in the passenger compartment, and goes down to a socket on the bottom of the boat. Then there's 2 shroud lines that connect off to either side with little grommets on the canvas. And I ran a third line, like a jib line, even though I don't have a jib yet, up to the bow of the boat. And then there's just a kind of a swing arm for the boom, a little gooseneck that connects. And I'm not sure what you call this, but rather than the mainsail going straight up to the top of the mast, there's an extension piece that comes off of the top of the mainsail that allows the mainsail to be more of a box shape. I'm not sure what the terminology is for that, but it's about 65 square feet of sail for a kayak, which impressed me. And then you just control by sitting back and holding on to a line that's attached to the end of the boom. Many people have jibs that they have either purchased or made for these, and that's one of my winter projects is to fit this thing out for a jib. There's no keel on the boat, and so I did purchase a lee board kit. So there's a center beam that goes across and attaches to the coaming, and then there's a lee board on either side of the boat that functions as a keel. And the rudder is just a built-in pedal rudder that you use when you're paddling or sailing. And
oh, wow.
Runs out the back. So
wow. Cool. So have you tried out the sail rig then?
I did, yeah. That was my second outing. I had a beautiful day with kind of nice, gentle wind, and I thought, let's get out there and figure out the rigging and figure out how it goes together. And it was great. I made it about 2/3 of the way around South Lake Union, and didn't ever feel close to capsizing. I need to figure out the rigging a little better, but for the most part, it was a really comfortable experience, and look forward to doing more of that when things start to get warmer here.
Yeah, so this is a 2-seater boat, and
it is.
Were you in the forward station or?
No, I actually was in the back. I sat in the back. That was the really the only place I think you can control the rudder pedals, at least by the way I've got it set up, and